Greetings, tis I, Eric the Car Guy, here with a 2007 Chevrolet truck with a 5.3 liter Vortec engine in it. The person that owns it has told me that a couple of shops have told him that he needs an engine. In particular, what's happening with it is it has a misfire as it runs, so it doesn't run smoothly. And it has a check engine light on with misfire codes, and I believe the specific cylinder is number 6. I thought I might take the opportunity with this vehicle to do our leak down test to determine if indeed it does need an engine, because if we find out that it is actually a problem inside the cylinder head that causes a combustion leak, if we find a combustion leak, we can very easily remove the cylinder head and have that sent out to be repaired, as opposed to replacing the entire engine. However, if we find an issue in the bottom end of the engine, that would mean that well, we might want to consider a replacement of the engine. The purpose of the leak down test, of course, is to measure the amount of compression that's being lost within a particular cylinder. In addition to that, it helps you pinpoint where that leak is going, and that's what we're going to cover today. So I promised you a leak down video. Got myself a leak down tool, got myself a car that could benefit from this test, and we're going to get rolling. So let's get started. And since I got the hood open, it won't tell me the miles. Nice of you. Oil pressure's good. Let's pull the code. Find out what we got here. Fuel pump primary circuit malfunction, interesting. Cylinder 6 misfire. So we got a fuel pump code and a cylinder 6 misfire. Knew about the cylinder 6. The fuel pump thing is interesting. I wonder if that was done during some kind of diagnostics with this. You can see it moving around in there. Got a little bit of a shake to it. Here's cylinder number 6 right there. I'm going to start with a power balance. All right, I'm going to start by removing the engine cover. And if anybody out there at GM is listening, could you give me a little more room to get up under this hood, please? Are you kidding me? Yes? Us tall people don't like to hit our heads. Now I'm going to do my power balance simply by unplugging the coil packs one at a time. That is going to be the easiest way, rather than trying to remove spark plug wires, things like that. Just disconnect the primary side of the system. Very conveniently, you have this is one thing you guys at GM did get right, and that was giving us Schrader valves on the fuel rail. And that's good, because like, it's no secret that you guys have some issues with fuel pumps. Nothing on 6. Alright, I agree that cylinder number 6 is the issue. The next step is I want to verify that number 6 has spark. So I'm going to get out my spark tester and see if it's getting spark as it runs. And what I've done is I've just taken the pigtail off of number 6 and ran that down to ground so that I can check its spark. That there is a good spark. All right, because I can, I'm just going to check its compression first, and then we'll do the leak down. So I'm going to remove the spark plug on that one cylinder and disable the fuel and ignition system. Actually, I just need to disable the fuel system. Disable the fuel system and see what I got. Easiest way that I can think of to disable the fuel system is the fuse box. They give you an explanation of all the stuff there under the cover. This one's our fuel pump over here. And the way you can read these is lay this out just like this. Then you can see you got a cluster of relays up here and a cluster of relays up here that look very similar. These things are normally laid out in the same way as they are in the fuse box itself. So that's how you would read it, is you would just sort of try to match up the pictures. And since this one right here says fuel pump, and it looks like this one's sitting right next to this, I'm just going to pull that relay right out of there and turn the key on and listen for the fuel pump. Now you don't need to start the car, just turn the key on and listen. You don't hear it buzzing. No fuel. I'm going to pull that spark plug out. Do you really need me to show you that? I'm going to pull the spark plug out and put my compression tester down in the hole just to get a start, just to see if compression or a mechanical issue is at issue here. And then we'll bust out the leak down. Alright, here's our plug. It smells a little oily. It smells a little like oil or something of that nature. Can you even see what I'm doing here? Yeah, it smells like oil. Before I go busting out my leak down, I'm actually going to do a quick compression test to see if there's an issue in the cylinder. So if the compression is considerably down in this cylinder, then I'm going to know that. And if I do find that it's significantly down, the next step is to get it up to top dead center and do the leak down. So I'm going to start with a quick compression test. It's important to open the throttle whenever you do a compression test. In the last compression test video, I put the foot to the floor to disable the fuel system, and it opened the throttle at the same time. I thought it was pretty efficient to do it that way. This one I've got the fuel pump disconnected also, so it really doesn't matter as far as fuel cutting with me pushing on the gas pedal, but I need to push on the gas pedal this time in order to open the throttle while doing the compression test. Hey, that's not very good at all. We have no compression in the cylinder. Now it's time to find out why. We need to get the cylinder up to top dead center. We need to figure out if it's on the exhaust or the compression stroke. Now, a good way to figure out if cylinder is coming up on the compression stroke, at least one way that I know, is I take a small piece of paper or a piece of tissue or something really light, stuff it in the cylinder hole, and as I spin the engine around, the theory is as the piston's coming up on its compression stroke, it will blow that little piece of paper or whatever you got in there out of the hole on its way up. And then I stick a screwdriver in there and turn the engine over by hand very slowly until I see it reach its apex. And once it's done that, I know it's at top dead center. And that's when I can perform my leak down. I'm going to use a small piece of TP in the hole. TP for my bunghole. Bunghole. And just sort of stick it down in the spark plug hole. I'm really just going to focus on cylinder number 6 here because the rest of the cylinders seem good. The problem cylinder is definitely number 6. We learned that through the power balance. We learned that through the compression, that it has no compression. And actually I have my doubts as to whether or not this tissue is going to blow out because there is no compression. So I'm going to be hard pressed to try to figure out using this method whether or not I'm at top dead center on the cylinder. The other thing I can do is go through the firing order, starting with the cylinder before this. I'm going to have to find out the firing order on this engine. But if I can find out the cylinder that fires before number 6, then what I can do is take that spark plug out and verify that that's coming up on its compression stroke. Once I know that, I know 6 is going to be next, and I can determine that number 6 would be at top dead center on its compression stroke, and we would be able to do our leak down from there. Leak down is different from a compression test in that you can actually tell where the leakage is. With a compression test, it just tells you that there is a leak. It doesn't say anything about where. However, a leak down test will not only tell you or give you a good indication of where the leak is coming from, it will also give you an idea of how big the leak is. That's why it's called a leak down. Let's look at that tool real quick. Okay, this is your leak down tester. Shop air gets connected here. This is the air regulator. This tool's brand new. I actually went out and got it for you. Okay. This is the regulator that I may have to get some kind of tool to get this to come loose. But this regulates these gauges here, and this tells you the amount of leakage, and this is the pressure going in. So basically what you're doing is you're calibrating this to your shop air pressure when you hook it up, and this hooks up to the exact same lead as your compression tester. So this is the part that's in the cylinder that would be normally with a compression tester. I'm not going to use this one though, and I'll tell you why later in the video. But you can't use a hose for a compression tester for this test unless you modify it, which I'll show you later. But anyway, the idea behind this is you run compressed air into the cylinder that you know has a leak or suspect has a leak, or you're just trying to check the general health of your engine. Unlike a compression test, this will tell you the amount of leakage that you have, and generally the rule is if it's more than 20%, it's between cylinders, it's excessive. Actually, if it's more than 10%, it's kind of excessive. So you want all the cylinders of an engine to be within 10% of one another. So you don't want one to be hugely leaking, because if it does, you'll have what you have here, which would be an engine miss. But the way you actually pinpoint where the leak is going, that is the fun part. So I'm going to see if I can figure out getting this thing up to top dead center on the cylinder you're testing. So for a leak down, unlike compression testing where you can just turn the key and go, leak down you have to have the cylinder top dead center all the way up the top of its travel on the compression stroke. The exhaust valve cannot be open. Both valves have to be closed. So compression stroke, top dead center in order to do the test. That's the first thing you need to do. You ever have those duh moments? Well, I just figured out that this thing won't turn unless you pull it out. And then you push it in to lock it. Yeah. So don't go grabbing a tool trying to twist this. Pop it out and turn it if it's not turning right away. Okay? Alright, well they did do this right, man. I got all kinds of room to get down in here to get on this crank bolt. But this is what I'm going to use to turn this engine over by hand. And I'm just going to go on a limb. Traditionally, these engines turn in a clockwise direction, so spin it in a clockwise direction. There it is. Move just a little bit. Now that I know that, I want to remove the tissue and insert a screwdriver or equivalent or something so that I can monitor the piston as it comes up. Alright, so I'm going to try to sneak this screwdriver down into the cylinder hole while I turn the crankshaft over and see if I can feel the top of the piston as it's coming up. And I'm hoping I'm going to feel the top of the piston. So coming up. That's pushing my screwdriver out. And when it stops, it starts to recede again. That's when the pistons reach the top of its travel. I'm pretty sure that that's top dead center on that piston. Take your ratchet off the crankshaft. You run pressure into the cylinder sometimes, the engine will rotate over, sometimes under its own compression. So you want to make sure you take your ratchets and stuff off of there. and set those aside. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert the same thing that's similar to the compression tester, but it's for the leak down. So I'm going to get that down inside the cylinder so I can run my compressed air there. Before I thread my hose down in there, I just put a little bit of oil on these threads and on this O-ring. Just a little bit, not a lot. This will help it go in easier, because normally what you're doing is you're getting this lined up inside the hole and then you're twisting it like this. So that's how you normally do your twisting back here, and you just use the other end to guide until you catch the threads. So be careful not to cross thread it while you're trying to get it down in there. You don't want to get it down in there so tight that you end up losing your tester. Just get it down far enough to where you know the O-ring seats, so it seals up the cylinder, and that's it. So when it stops turning and it's in there, you're in there. Alright, before we put this on the truck, we're going to hook it up to shop air. Make sure that this valve is turned all the way counterclockwise first, because we need to calibrate it before it goes on the car. Now we're going to turn it in. Remember, you have to pull down on it on this particular one. We're going to keep turning it in till this gauge reads 0, and then we're going to lock it down. Don't go any farther. I'm going to say that. Darn it. These can be, at least this one's a little tricky. Some of these are better than others. Ah, there we go. So I'm going to lock that off. So that's the reason why we have this lock-in thing here. So now I've got it locked off. I know that's not exactly on 0, but you know what? This is not going to be 100% exact, but as long as you're in that yellow calibration zone, you're good. And now we're going to go take this end and hook it up to our cylinder. Okay, you see that? Went straight to 100%. So it's leaking out 100%. Now we need to figure out where. What you need to do next is you need to listen in all the different places. So that's gone down 100%. You need to listen to all the different places where air could be escaping. And it's quiet in this shop. And I don't know if this tester is a little weird or what, but yeah, it does say that it's 100% leakage. But I don't hear it going anywhere. Normally you hear it. But if you suspect that it's leaking past the rings into the crankcase, well, that's not a good sign. Suspect that it's leaking past the rings into the crankcase, you listen here for a hissing noise, the air escaping. If you suspect that it's leaking into the coolant, and you might have a head gasket problem, it will make bubbles into here. You can't really get into the top of the radiator on this one, but you would see and hear bubbles. If you've got an intake valve that's leaking, I'm going to remove this snorkel here, and if there was an intake valve leaking, you could open up the intake and you'd hear the air rushing out in the intake. If it was leaking out of the exhaust, an exhaust valve was bad, you could go back here to the tailpipe and listen and hear it rushing out here. What concerns me is I don't hear it going anywhere. Okay, I'll admit it. It's a cheap leak down tester. You know, I don't often do these tests, and I don't really feel like spending a great deal of money on one of these testers, but it's nice to know where the leakage is going if you have leakage. Well, I got another solution for you. All right, I'm not having faith in my tester, because normally when I hook these things up and there's 100% leakage, I hear it hissing and going somewhere. Not sure what I'm doing wrong, but this is the way I've done it long before I had one of those testers. That is actually how you use the tester, and it should work. But I just take my hose from my compression tester, take the end off, and if you look down in there, there's your Schrader valve, like on a tire. Take that Schrader valve out. Now, mine, for whatever reason, no longer comes out. But if you take that Schrader valve out, and just hook this up like you're doing a compression test into the cylinder, and then just chuck it straight up to the air. Without the Schrader valve in this would be spraying all over the place. You chuck the air straight up to the hose, you can hear where the air is coming out, and you'll be able to find a leak of where it's going. So a leak down tester will tell you the percentage of leakage and give you, like say if you've got an engine that's marginal, that you know is pretty worn out, and you're trying to figure out whether it's time for a rebuild, something along that line, and you need to know a percentage, you need a number. Leak down tester. If you need to know where the leak is, just take your compression tester, take the Schrader valve out, shove it down in the cylinder like you're doing a compression test, hook it up to shop air, listen at the tailpipe for an exhaust valve leak, listen at the intake for an intake valve leak, listen at the cooling system or take the cap off the radiator, look for bubbles for a leak into the combustion chamber. And if it's a leak past the rings down into the crankcase, take the oil cap off or the dipstick out, and you'll be able to hear the air rushing out of that place plain as day. And sometimes you'll even be able to put your hand over those things, and you'll feel it blowing against your hand. So this helps you pinpoint, unlike a compression test. A compression test just gives you a general overall. This leak down helps you pinpoint where the issue is: exhaust valve, intake valve, coolant leak, compression leak into the crankcase. That's why this test is different. So I'm going to just take the shop air and run it straight into the cylinder, see what happens. Maybe this one has a Schrader valve in it. I don't know. Now I'm hearing something. I want you to listen. Fogging up the lens. You can hear it coming out of there. That's where the oil cap goes. No bubbles down in the coolant. Don't hear anything out the tailpipe. I don't hear anything in here at the throttle plate. There it is, compressed air going straight into the cylinder. You're always going to hear a little bit coming out of here. But this is a bit. And since this cylinder has no compression, I believe number 6, if I'm going to guess, I think it's got broken rings. Yeah, if I'm going to guess on this one, I'm going to say broken rings. Now, just for the heck of it, I'm going to test the cylinder next to it just to make sure that maybe that one's sealed up, or the next cylinder in the firing order, just to make sure that my testing methods are sound. This is my first time using this particular leak down tester. I don't really trust it because I didn't hear that air rushing out like it did when I hooked the air straight up to it. It just showed me that it was 100% leakage and then quit. I'm not exactly sure why that is. Perhaps that's the way it's designed, but most of the leak downs that I've used, it shows you the percentage of leakage and you can hear the air coming out just like I'm hearing it on this one. So I'm a little confused as to why it's acting this way. So I'm going to verify my results by testing a known good cylinder to see how it reacts. And if it reacts normally, and there is not a whole lot of air that appears to be rushing out of the oil cap, then I'm going to conclude that yes, this cylinder is having a leakage problem, and it is in the bottom end of the engine, not the top end of the engine. This test is good if you're worried about a burned out valve being a cause of a loss of compression. If that was the case, all you'd have to do is remove the cylinder head and send it to a machine shop or whatever, replace the valve to reseal the cylinder head in the combustion chamber up there. But a leak down at the bottom end through broken rings, whatever, that is going to be a different animal indeed. So we may be looking at replacing the engine in this truck. But at least we have evidence, and we know, we don't guess. We gather evidence, and we base our conclusions on our evidence. We don't go by guessing. Alright, so just to verify that my tester is working correctly, I decided to move to a different cylinder to see if I could get a better result. And pulling this spark plug out, I found evidence of burning oil. You see this on a spark plug, and this was number 1 cylinder. You know that the engine's consuming oil. So I'm curious as to see what the leakage is on this particular cylinder. Let's find out. This is number 1 cylinder. So I know my gauge is accurate because this one says it has moderate leakage. As opposed to the other one that had a lot of leakage. So I guess that is it. I guess that one over there has got 100% leakage. You got some kind of ring problem. We saw the kind of oil that was burning in this one. I'm just surprised that I don't hear the air rushing out like I normally would. I'm going to go check the oil cap now. But this is what you're looking for. You're looking for it to be in the green, fairly simply. And you're looking for no more difference between cylinders than, let's say 10%. 15, maybe okay. But if they vary more than 10% per cylinder, and you got one that's like way down, like I got over there, like that 100%, well, yeah, problem. Okay, this time I do hear a lot more at the oil cap, so I know the engine is leaking internally. Our engine might look good on the outside, but on the inside, it's not looking so good. In fact, I don't have to go any further with any more cylinders. I mean, we got one with 100% leakage and another with 60% leakage. So that says inside that engine doesn't look so good. So it's got to come out, be replaced, rebuilt, whatever. Cylinder leakage testing. Diagnostics. It will save you a lot of trouble. If I'd have found that one of these valves was bad, like maybe it had a burned up exhaust valve that wasn't sealing or something like that, could have easily found it with a leak down test, and then I would have only had to remove a cylinder head instead of the whole engine. Think about it. Take some time, figure it out. Don't shotgun it. I'm Eric the Car Guy. I hope this video was helpful to you and gave you some useful information. You can always visit me at EricTheCarGuy.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And on Sundays, most Sundays, I do a podcast at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to check that out and listen, or if you want to listen to past podcasts or miss the ones that have already happened, go to the player on my homepage, scroll down to the bottom, click on that player, and that will lead you to places where you can find all the old episodes, which are also posted on iTunes under carandtrucktalk.com. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, stay dirty.